Alright, what's going on, everyone on YouTube, Nesruler? Sorry, got a lot of shit down here because I've been working on Argento paper I've been talking about on the podcast lately, so I have all my books down here and shit like that I've been using for that. But welcome to Monday here on Body Bags. So this week was my pick. And of course, I had to go with Killer Dolls, which is an interesting subgenre of horror that seemed to, pick up with Child's Play and things like that, and died off during the 90s. And now it's starting to go up a little bit again, but there's not really that many modern day Killer Doll films. There's some, but not too many. So I decided to go all the way back and do one of the earlier Killer Doll films. Not Killer Doll films, but horror films that have to do with revolving around a doll. And that's the 1929 film, The Great Gabbo. Now this film has an interesting history. For one, it's an early sound film, so the sound is not very good whatsoever. It's actually pretty shitty. But that's understandable. It's an late 1920s sound film and an early sound film in general. So of course that's going to be a rough going right off the bat. And you get past the sound issues. You have a pretty interesting narrative here. And another thing about this film is some scenes were colorized during the release, but those scenes that were colorized are thought to be lost, and the only thing that has survived from those color scenes are the black and white negatives. And I can't remember what I read of how they colorized the scenes that they did, but all I know is that those scenes are lost. The color scenes are lost, and they're just in the film in black and white. Now this film is has another little bit of an interesting history to it. It's in the public domain, so there is a 68-minute cut of the film, and there's a 93-minute cut of the film, which is a big difference. That's talking about 25 minutes or so of footage that's missing from the public domain version and the theatrical version. That's what was shown in 1929 in theaters. So the film follows this douchebag, absolute douchebag, that I would totally have him in my top 5 biggest douchebag list if I watched this film before we did it on the podcast. But biggest douchebag named Gabbo, and he is a tranquilicist, and he has this doll named Otto, and this doll, it's obvious this doll has a little bit of human traits. It's not really Gabbo's voice, making this doll do type of things. It's actually, this doll's a little bit put to life in some way or another. It really isn't explained that much. I would assume it's part of, Gabbo's multiple personalities, somehow makes the doll moving like that, but we never really get an explanation about why the doll is pretty much talking by itself, because throughout the film we see Gabbo, drinking water and smoking a cigarette, and at the same time the doll's talking with a normal voice, which Gabbo of course says that he's doing just to make us act good and things like that. But it's obvious that something's going on with this doll, that he is not controlling its voice actually. It's actually controlling its own voice, like I said. So this film goes on. Gabbo has this love interest, or he has this girlfriend who she's such a fucking douchebag too. And one night when he's doing his act, she comes on stage and she has this platter of water that he's supposed to put on the table when he drinks, and she drops the tray, and he is the biggest bitch to her after the show that we see backstage. He's such an asshole to her, and all these kind of things are just like, you're a fucking douchebag. So she leaves, which is interesting because she stands up for herself, which is interesting because, women usually haven't really stood up for themselves too much. You have your one girl that usually stands up a little bit, but she really stands up for herself and leaves and makes a change in her life, which is interesting. So, of course, Gabbo starts to go downhill because he lost his girl, and one night, even though he lost his girl, his show started to get popular because this doll, he does all these things with this doll. So one night, after one of his shows, he sees his old girlfriend with this guy dancing, and he becomes extremely jealous. And he mainly thinks Gabbo ultimately caused this pain that's inside of him and things like that. So, towards the end of the film, there's a really interesting scene with Gabbo smashing Otto, and some things happen. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but some interesting things with Gabbo and Otto when he smashes him towards the end of the film. So, like I said, this film isn't really a killer doll film, but it's an early horror film that has to do a psychoanalytic horror film, early horror film. It's really not too much about a doll killing people, but a doll that is obviously possessed in some sort. And like I said, we don't really find out who this doll is possessed by or things like that, but it's obviously doing things by itself. And it's the relationship between Gabbo and this doll and his love interest. It's okay. It's not very good, to be completely honest. I guess why it's not really talked about when it's considered it's in the public domain. You really don't see it popping up in too many places. You definitely check out the longer cut. It has a lot more interesting things going on in it, but it's a really early, tranquilicist doll film, this is alright. 5 out of 10, just average. It's not the best thing, of course, that I've seen, but for an early attempt at this idea of having a doll doing things by itself was pretty good. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. If you want to follow me on my channel, you can do so at youtube.com/Nesruler22. I'll talk to you guys soon. See you guys.